What does it actually mean to recover? This episode shares a recovery interview with Rachel, who recovered from fibromyalgia. Yet Rachel still uses the words, "I have fibromyalgia." I found this discussion very insightful, and if you listen carefully, you will hear us peel back the layers of this aspect of Rachel's story as the interview progresses. It can be easy to attribute our progress or our setbacks to specific things. But without testing them in isolation, how do we know? I really appreciate Rachel's approach to making difficult changes that led to her recovery. For anyone struggling to follow through, there are some valuable lessons here. I also appreciate her enthusiasm for spreading hope and understanding of how it transforms how we engage with our challenges, and her story about her career changes captures that beautifully. Enjoy this interview and leave a comment to let me know what you got out of the interview. Just a short but important message regarding the content of this podcast. The ideas, concepts, and opinions expressed in this recording, website, and associated media and products are intended to be used for educational and information purposes only. Nothing presented is intended to replace your physician, nor are they a substitute for medical diagnosis, advice, or treatment. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the authors, guests, speakers, and publishers are not rendering medical advice of any kind. Okay, I'm very excited to speak with another fibromyalgia recoverer. Today I'm speaking with Rachel from Chicago. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I bet you never thought you were going to do one of these interviews when you were sick all those years ago.
I did not, no.
Rachel, look, best place to start with these things is always at the beginning, although sometimes the beginning is not that obvious. I guess my first question is, how long ago did you first start to become sick?
Yeah, so I started exhibiting symptoms in 2010. So that would have been about 10 years ago. And like most people that have fibromyalgia, it typically starts after some sort of traumatic event. And mine happened to be a water skiing accident. So I actually tore my meniscus, ended up in a hospital in the emergency room, and thought that was it. And it wasn't until maybe about a month later, 2 months later, I started waking up in pain. So I would wake up in the morning and feel very sore and achy, mostly in my lower back. And I thought, I must have gotten too hard at the gym, or at the time I was a dancer. So I thought maybe I went too far at dance practice. Let me pull back a little bit. I'm probably just sore. But the pain just kept getting worse and worse. And then it went into my arms and in my legs. And also the other symptom I had was the chronic fatigue. So with fibromyalgia, there's like 1,000 different symptoms that you could have. And for me, it was the chronic pain, chronic fatigue, the burning sensation on my skin, sensitivity. And I immediately thought the worst. I thought, I'm dying. I must be dying. There's something wrong with me. So I went to the doctor, and like most people with fibromyalgia, they did every test imaginable. We did blood tests, x-rays. They sent me to specialists. I did an MRI, but basically, I even saw a chiropractor, and I just kept thinking, what is wrong with me? I don't understand. Why am I feeling this way? And it actually took about 10 doctors to figure it out. And a lot of people with fibromyalgia have very similar stories. And that's really the way that it's diagnosed, is if you don't have anything else, it's probably fibro. So I started exhibiting pain, I think that was August 2010, and I was officially diagnosed in January of 2011.
Yeah, look, I mean, when we don't know what's going on, a week, 2 weeks, a month is a crazy long time, isn't it? Not knowing why you're having all these issues. And so now we're talking about like nearly 6 months, 5 months. And it's like, wow, I mean, that's what a horrendous experience. And when we reflect on the wider experience in the community, you know, people go decades without being diagnosed. And you go, oh, goodness. I think there comes a point when they stop seeking a diagnosis or what's wrong. It just becomes the status quo, doesn't it? So what did it mean to you when you got diagnosed? I mean, all these symptoms, and then you're told it's fibromyalgia. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, so I remember really vividly just because I was kind of journaling at the time. And I remember getting the diagnosis and feeling a sense of relief, but then also feeling this sense of dread because like all of the different doctors that were looking at me, one of the doctors was actually for cancer. And they originally thought they found a spot on my MRI. They thought maybe it was cancer. It ended up not being, thank God.
And when you say a spot, you mean where was the spot?
On my spleen. So there was a spot on my spleen, and it was sent to a specialist to make sure that it wasn't cancerous or that it didn't look like something that was cancerous. And they said, no, it's normal. People have these all the time. It's a false alarm. And so when I got the fibromyalgia diagnosis, I had this really strange feeling of like, well, if it had been cancer, I would know what to do. Like I would know how to fix it and how to make it go away. But it's not. And now what's next? Like, oh, I have this pain and there's nothing you can do about it. You will never get better.
Was that based on what you were reading, or was that what your doctor told you?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. In 2010, nobody was talking about fibromyalgia. I remember my doctor who diagnosed me went to Google, typed in fibromyalgia, printed off a bunch of sheets, and handed them to me, and was like, "Here, read about this, disorder that you have now."
So there was no prognosis per se. He didn't say you'll have this for this time, or it's lifelong, or he.
Nope. So he just said that this is what you have, and it's not curable, and that's it, and go on your way. And I was kind of left with just saying, okay, this is going to be my life now. I don't know what's next. There were really I couldn't find any blogs. There were no YouTube channels at the time to say what to do next. So I was just, I guess you could say I wasn't sure what to do.
Well, how old were you at the time?
I was 25.
Wow.
So
okay.
I'm 35 now.
Yeah, that's just not what any 25-year-old wants to hear. I mean, let's face it, it's not what anyone wants to hear. But when we're young and we think of ourselves as healthy and invincible, then it's a real shock. So, I mean, your symptoms, you get diagnosed with fibromyalgia, you've got the pain. Is the pain all over the place now, or just still the lower back?
Yes. No, it's all over the place. I noticed it would kind of come, flare up stronger and come back down. It would never go away. It would always be there. But in times of when I was very stressed, it would flare up. In the morning, it was always the worst. If I took a nap, I noticed I would always wake up in pain. And that was a big problem because with chronic fatigue, all you want to do is sleep. And I really had to kind of fight against that because I knew if I took a nap, I would wake up with more pain.
What about other symptoms? What other symptoms did you experience over the years?
Yeah, so That's a great question. I would say I did have IBS issues, like stomach issues, but I've really had those my whole life. So I didn't necessarily tie that to my fibromyalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I noticed was some food sensitivities that were coming up. The first one was soy. So all of a sudden, I couldn't have any sort of soy without becoming violently ill. And it just kind of popped up out of nowhere. And then the other one was most tree nuts. So I'm okay with almonds, but for some reason, pecans, walnuts, cashews, I will develop a weird rash, and especially like an itchy mouth, etc. Some people say that could be a symptom of fibromyalgia, but then also I know people that happens also, and it's just kind of unexplained.
What about sensitivities? Did you have any sensitivities to lights or sounds or things like that?
Yeah,
Smells?
no, I never got that. I know that a lot of people do have that, and sometimes I wonder if it's because I really started working on going into remission shortly after I was diagnosed. I was very lucky in that I started putting the pieces together within, I would say, maybe a year and a half of being diagnosed. I'm wondering if I hadn't gone that route, if sensitivities would have come later. I do know that I get overwhelmed very easily, but that's also a symptom. So growing up, I have what's called general anxiety disorder. And that's a very common symptom. So, when I am in a very crowded room and there's a lot of noise, or if I'm very stressed and I have a lot of things to do, I will have to, bring myself away and kind of quiet myself down.
Okay. And what about cognitive issues? Do you have any difficulties with memories, concentration, that sort of thing? Yes, definitely.
But from at least this is my theory, with cognitive issues, I think it's directly related to the pain, because if you have this sort of like buzzing in your ear of pain, that's all you can think about. It's so hard to like tune out the pain. And I think that was a big reason why I wasn't able to concentrate or remember things. I'm not sure if that's like different from the way other people experience this like fibro fog, but I definitely noticed, especially at work, when the pain would kind of kick up, it was very hard to concentrate on anything except the pain.
So what were you doing for work at the time? And how was your work impacted by becoming ill?
Yes. So I was a middle school teacher. So I taught 12 and 13-year-olds, and I taught inner city, so low-income students. Our school did not have a lot of money. It was an incredibly stressful situation, and one that would cause the pain to flare up a lot. Not only just the stress of teaching, but being on my feet all day, just like, other teachers, other maybe nurses, doctors would have kind of experienced the same issue of just when you're on your feet all day, it can be very exhausting. And I actually had to quit teaching because I couldn't do it with fibromyalgia.
How long was it until you had to quit?
I think I quit in 2011, like shortly after I was diagnosed.
It's not an easy step to make, is it?
No, not at all, especially because I didn't know what to do next for a career. With teaching, and especially like I have a master's in teaching, a lot of other businesses or other careers will say, well, what can you do? You're just a teacher. So it was very hard to kind of transition into another career where I didn't have to be on my feet all day. And it took many years to kind of find the right one. But I'm a web designer, and that is kind of like the perfect fit for me.
Yeah. Okay, great. So before we get into your story a little more about what happened with the illness and then how things started to turn around, I guess I want to just ask about what happened beforehand. Like, how long had you been at that job?
So I graduated undergrad to college in 2008. So I taught for about 3 years.
Okay. At the same place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so obviously you had this horrific water skiing accident. And did anything else happen in the year leading up to you becoming ill?
It did not. So that was sort of the final straw that broke the camel's back. But one thing that I've learned with my fibromyalgia research is a lot of people with fibromyalgia tend to burn the candle at both ends. We are, and this is incredibly true for me, we are type A personalities. We might be perfectionists. We love working incredibly hard. We love succeeding. And so my entire life was basically just, it revolved around working. I would work very hard as a teacher. I worked very hard in school. I actually have 2 different master's degrees. And to do all of that, I did not sleep. I would maybe get 2-3 hours a night, every single night for years. In college, I would routinely stay up for 48 hours in order to write a large paper. And I thought that this was totally fine and that it was no big deal, and that it was sort of like my superhuman strength that I could kind of function without sleep. And the same kind of went for my diet as well. I do not enjoy cooking. I do not enjoy eating. It's not like a passion of mine. And so I would pick incredibly simple meals. I would eat a lot of fast food. I would eat just whatever I could and just get it over with so that I could go back to working.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. So here you are. You had to quit your job. You're 26, 25, 26. You're severely chronically ill. What's going on in your head? What's your outlook to life?
Yeah, not great. So I was in a pretty dark place. I was applying to jobs. I wasn't really sure what to apply for, what skills I had to offer. And I spent a lot of time at home in bed on YouTube. I watched like a lot of the makeup YouTube when it was first coming out. And I read a lot of blogs. And the big blogs that were kind of exploding at the time in 2010, 2011 were paleo blogs. So all of the big paleo bloggers were coming out. And that was something that I really started to read more and more, that eventually led to some of the choices that I made.
Okay. And so what happens with your illness? I mean, how long is it until there is some kind of a shift? And what's happening with your illness during that time? Is it getting worse? Is it the same? Are there new symptoms popping up? Are you seeing lots more doctors? Tell me about that.
Yes. So the pain was getting worse. I did notice that since I quit my job, it wouldn't flare as high as it was when I was working, but it was really starting to affect my mental health. I was getting to the point of like, I don't know if I can go on living like this. Kind of what's the point? And I suddenly had this thought of, no one is coming to save you. So I can't just sit here and do nothing. I have to do something. So my first thought was, okay, I'm going to go see doctors. And we have a hospital here called Rush Medical. It's a fantastic research hospital. And there was one doctor in particular who really studied fibromyalgia and is very well known. And I thought, he's the one. He's going to have the answer. So I went and he did the pressure point diagnostic test on me, where you push on all of the pressure points. All of them lit up. And he said, "Yep, Rachel, you have fibromyalgia. Goodbye." And I said, "What do you, I know that. Well, what do I do about it?" And he said, "Well, there are all these medications you can take, but between you and me, they're a total waste of time. Don't even bother. The medications don't work. We just don't know what else to do. So we're going to give these to you." He's like, "I'm happy to write a prescription if you want to try them." But he goes, "But I guarantee you they're not going to work." And I remember coming home just in tears, thinking that, I mean, that's it. If this specialist who specializes in fibromyalgia is telling me there's absolutely no hope, then I am not going to go to a doctor anymore. I'm going to have to figure this out myself. And that's when I started doing more research and just trying to see anything I could find online about it. And the kind of two things that happened shortly after was, one, I read online somewhere that exercise could help. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I was exercising before I had fibromyalgia, so I don't know how this is going to help, but you kind of reach a point when you're sick of, I will try anything. If someone says exercise is going to help, let me try it. And the second thing that kind of happened was I was at a party with a bunch of people I've never met before. It was a friend's party. And somebody was there, and, we're catching up or introducing ourselves. And I mentioned that I have fibromyalgia, and she said, "No kidding, me too. But my pain went away since I cut out gluten and dairy." And I remember leaving the party and turning to my boyfriend at the time. And I was just like, that's interesting. Like, I haven't read that anywhere, but maybe I should try that with the exercise and see what happens. And I think right at the time, the way that I cut out gluten and dairy was there was an elimination diet that became very popular in 2011. And that's the Whole30. And it was like on all of the paleo blogs, to try this elimination diet for 30 days. And two of the foods that it cut out was gluten and dairy. And so I thought, I'm just going to do this elimination diet. My boyfriend at the time did it too. And let me just see if it works. Like, why not? Let me try it.
What have you got to lose?
Exactly.
It's pretty innocuous, right? Yeah, because you're still eating food. It's not like you're cutting out everything, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the Whole30, basically it's cutting out any food that might be problematic. So all grains, even things like rice, all dairy, alcohol, all artificial sweeteners, corn, which for some people, they might have a reaction to corn, but there's a whole list. And the best thing about the Whole30, all of the rules are online for free. And that's something else that I guess I should say too, is like, even though I put myself in charge of my own healing and searched out the answers and experimented on myself, I am also a huge supporter in professional doctors, nutritionists, registered dietitians. I have not turned my back on modern medicine at all. And I think that sometimes people who do find more holistic treatments will occasionally turn their back on modern medicine and say that it didn't help me, so I'm not going to reach out. But I truly believe it's a partnership. It's you use modern medicine for when you need it, but you also should search for your own answers as well.
Yeah, for sure. So how long had you been unwell at this stage? When you started to do the exercise and the diet changes?
Yes. So it was about a year and a half. Okay. So I would say, and it was slow. Like changes did not happen overnight. And I think the number one question that people always ask me was, how long did it take to get better? And the thing is that I don't have an answer for that, because you don't suddenly make huge lifestyle changes all overnight. You don't say, oh, I'm going to go exercise 5 days a week, every single week. Nobody can do that. You have to slowly build up. And so it's maybe you exercise once a week, then maybe you exercise twice a week, and you push it just a little bit more each and every day. And the same thing went with the diet. Yes, I did the Whole30, and by the end of the diet, I thought maybe my pain was better, but I couldn't really tell. And it wasn't until I went to reintroduce gluten, and I think I had pasta, and just immediately the pain shot up. And I thought, wait, that's it. This is it. And from then on, I thought, okay, I'm gonna cut out gluten. But anybody who's ever made the decision of, I'm going to eat better, it's not just, from now on, I'm never going to touch gluten for the rest of my life. It kind of goes back and forth. So there were days where I would be at a birthday party and there would be cake, and I would say, well, I'm just going to have a slice of cake. It's no big deal. And then immediately regret it the next day. And I love cheese. I think cheese is probably my favorite food in the whole world. And that was the hardest for me to give up. And I was constantly going back and forth of, do I really give this up? Is this really working? Maybe dairy, maybe this whole diet thing isn't working. So what's the point? If eating gluten and dairy isn't going to affect me, I'm just going to go ahead and eat it because I miss ice cream. So forget it. And there was a lot of kind of back and forth and learning experiences until I finally made those huge lifestyle changes and was able to really see the benefit from it.
So small changes over a longer period of time. I mean, how long is it that you're doing this stuff where you suddenly go, there's a significant shift, I'm improving? How long was that?
Yeah, it was a year. So
there was enough evidence for you to persist for a year, because you noticed that when you weren't doing it, you were getting a worsening, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm cured.
No. Yeah,
it was just a little bit better.
Yes, exactly. And I think that can be very frustrating to some people, because we do kind of expect, well, she told me that exercise would work, or she told me that cutting out gluten would work. It's not working. So why am I doing this? And I think that it's really keeping the faith and knowing that even if it doesn't work, exercise is always a good option. It's always good to exercise for your heart, for your body, for your muscles. It's a good habit to have anyway. So keep doing it. And the same thing goes for eating healthy. It might not be gluten and dairy. It might be something else. I've had some people reach out to me and say, for them, it was artificial sweeteners or corn. And it wasn't until they cut those out that they
artificial sweetness or
corn.
Or corn. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're doing this, and what, do you just keep going and going until you get better and better until you're fully well, or did you do other things?
Yeah. So I kept going and going, and I noticed, oh, my pain's not as bad today. Huh, this is interesting. But I was also making other lifestyle changes as well, and it took me a while to realize that those were connected. So I made other lifestyle changes, just because they're healthy changes, not necessarily because I thought it would affect my fibromyalgia. But now looking back, I really do think they made a difference. Excuse me. So the first thing is sleep. Like I mentioned, I was a chronic undersleeper. I got maybe 2 hours a night. That was it. And eventually I learned, you know what, Rachel, that's not healthy. You should fix that. And I really made a priority to sleep. I got blackout curtains, so my room is dark. I even bought one of those face masks to block out the light. I set a routine, so I made sure to go to bed early, wake up at the same time every day. And, there are like 1,000 different things you can do to really help your sleep, but I did all of them to really prioritize my sleep. And then I also started yoga, and it was something I did in college. I really enjoyed it. I started working at a yoga studio where I cleaned the studio. I was basically a janitor, and I got to take classes for free. And so I thought, why not? And I started going to yoga regularly as well. And that did wonders for my mental health, for my stress levels, for my anxiety, just to have that time to really breathe and focus.
Interesting. And so was there anything else you were doing?
I think that was it. So I was exercising at the time. I started to learn how to do weightlifting, and so that was a big hobby. The diet, obviously, and the yoga with sleep, and I think all of those, kind of connected. And also, obviously, quitting my stressful job also helps lower the stress. But now, when I tell people, if you're exercising, if you are eating, a certain diet, and maybe that's different for everybody. Some people are vegan, some people give up gluten. There are many ways that you can tackle it. But whatever it is that you're doing, if it's working for you and you're doing that, but you still feel like a piece of the puzzle is missing, and you think, I'm doing all the right things, why is this not working? I really think that looking at stress levels and looking at your sleep are sort of like the missing key that a lot of people might not be looking at.
It's pretty stressful to have fibromyalgia, huh?
Very, very. And, the other thing, there's so many things that can cause us stress. I think we as a society are stressed out, and we pretend that it's just part of life. But, whatever we can do to kind of fix that, I think is so important, even if you don't have fibromyalgia. And maybe that's being a therapist. Maybe that's quitting your job. Maybe you can't quit your job because the financial obligations are going to be too stressful. I think it's going to be different for everybody to figure out what is going to help with those stress levels, but I think it's so important.
So what else did you do to reduce your stress? I mean, fibromyalgia is stressful. If you experience it, okay, things are better, right? Let's say a year down the track, then 18 months, 2 years, I'm not sure exactly, how it's all panning out. So things are getting better, but let me ask you this question. How did you feel about the pain?
So I guess I felt a little angry about the pain at first. I especially because I tied it to this water skiing accident. And there were many days where I thought, if I had only not gone water skiing, if I had only never done that and never got injured, I would not be dealing with this right now. And I think that that's probably very common, to kind of wish that whatever kind of sparked it had never happened. But something that I really try to concentrate, and I still concentrate on, is that if you are susceptible to have fibromyalgia, it will always be there dormant in you. And it just takes one thing for it to come out. So whether that was the water skiing accident, or whether that's 10 years down the line of, getting into a car accident, or maybe that's childbirth, or, 1,000 other things that could happen in life, eventually it's going to come out. And so I just really tried to focus on that, of eventually I was going to get fibromyalgia anyway. So at least it happened while I was young and had the hope to kind of push forward and find something that would work for me.
So you talked about the yoga. Were you doing meditation as well?
Yeah, a little bit. So I...
As part of the yoga. I mean, obviously it can be part of yoga.
Exactly. So I know meditation is so good. I have read all of the meditation books, and I know I have to meditate, and I hate meditating. I hate sitting still. I can't quiet my mind. I have the racing thoughts all of the time, and meditation is hard. Anybody who's ever tried it will probably say the same thing. I mean, that's why it's called a meditation practice. You don't sit down and suddenly are amazing at meditating. It takes years for some to get it right. But what I noticed was, with yoga, it was easier to meditate. And kind of twofold. One was, I noticed whenever I could concentrate on what my body was doing, so the movements, the flow of yoga, my mind would shut down and would get quiet. And it was very similar to what happens when I dance. So when I was a competitive dancer and I was concentrating on the steps or my body moving, all of the stress and things that I was thinking about for the day would kind of disappear. And I think that's another form of meditation. It doesn't necessarily have to be, let me sit in this position that's probably uncomfortable and try to quiet my mind. If that's too hard, dance, yoga, even, just exercise in general, anything that has your body moving or stretching can sometimes really help you kind of center yourself easier.
So what about other things? Did you do other things? Did you get any psychotherapy?
I did not. So I actually did not see a therapist until after my pain started to become controlled. So I would say it was maybe 2013. I noticed that I wasn't eating as much food as I should and was losing quite a bit of weight. And this is a side effect of cutting out certain foods and saying, we kind of hear this term now, orthorexia, where people who will only eat clean or will only eat certain foods and get very stressed out if they kind of veer off and try to eat something else. And so, I was dealing with that. And then also some body image issues, just like any other dancer will tell you, all dancers, we all struggle with body image. And I couldn't understand why I was having some of these fears around food and body dysmorphia. And so I ended up going to a therapist, and that really kind of did wonders to find this balance of, yes, it's okay to and good to cut out certain foods that are irritating your IBS, your fibromyalgia, your body in general. But if there are foods that your body can tolerate, you need to eat them, and you need to not be afraid to eat them.
So then you did that therapy. How long were you in therapy for? Did you find it was very successful? What kind of therapy? Just CBT?
Yes. Yes. So I am a huge fan of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what it was. And it's interesting because when I made the appointment, I was not seeking out a certain type of therapist. It just happened that was the method that she used. And it did wonders. It did wonders not only for my thoughts and feelings around food, but just in general with, some of my general anxiety disorders, teaching me how to concentrate on breathing or different grounding exercises for when I get overwhelmed. And I sort of graduated from therapy. I think it was only about 6 months. And I'm a huge fan and highly recommend CBT to anyone who thinks that it could be beneficial.
How often did you go?
I went once a week.
Once a week, okay. And so at the end of this therapy now, and it's 2013, are you recovered now, or is it going to take a little bit longer?
No, I am. Wasn't experiencing any sort of symptoms anymore. I was exercising regularly. Eating was now easy, was just the lifestyle change for me. And I went to the same doctor who diagnosed me. And I was telling her about all of these changes that I made, and I think it worked. Like, I don't think I have it anymore. And so we did the pressure point test again for diagnostic, and none of them lit up. And I mean, that's pretty much the only thing you can test right now. Like we know there's no blood, or hopefully there'll be a blood test at some point, but there is no test right now. It's just that pressure point test. So the fact that none of the spots lit up was pretty much the sign of, okay, Rachel, you are in remission. And something that I try to be very clear about when I share my story is I am not cured. There is no cure. And if at any point in my life I maybe stray away from this very balanced life of no stress and getting good sleep and working out regularly and sticking to my diet, if I veer off from that for too long, it will come back. The symptoms will come back. But
and how do you know that?
Because I have made that mistake. So I have had periods of my life. The most recent was in 2018. So I guess I should say December 2017, January 2018, I was working in a incredibly stressful environment. It was not good for my mental health. It was not good for my sleeping at all. And it was causing so many of these mental health issues to come back. My stress level was going through the roof. I couldn't sleep at night. I was crying all the time. And all of a sudden, I started noticing, okay, here comes the pain again. And thankfully, because I was still exercising 5-6 days a week because I was still sticking to my diet. It was nothing terrible. It was nothing like it was before, but it was enough. It was this like hum of pain throughout my body that said, if you continue down this path, it's going to get worse. And so in January 2018, I quit my job. And I was incredibly fortunate that I had been putting money away into savings. And so I could do that, where I had enough money to just say, nope, I'm not going down this road again. And I quit. And I would say, I don't know, maybe about 3 to 4 weeks after I had quit my job, all of the symptoms went away.
So is fibromyalgia a bad thing?
You know, that's so funny, because this is going to sound terrible, but getting fibromyalgia was probably the best thing to ever happen. And I think the only reason I can say that is because I'm in remission. I think that saying that out loud to someone who is not in remission is incredibly offensive, because if you are in pain and you're living with that, it is obviously not the best thing to ever happen to you. And how dare I say that?
It's the worst thing in the world.
Exactly. So I 100% admit that the only reason I can say that is because I have found remission. But looking at my life and the road that it was going down back when I was 25, the fact that I wasn't exercising and that I was eating fast food and that I was sleeping 2-3 hours a night at most, and having a very stressful job where my stress levels were very high, my anxiety was very high. None of that is healthy at all. And even if I never got fibromyalgia, those things could have caused 1,000 other horrible, health issues.
Sure.
And so comparing, Rachel when I was 25 to comparing Rachel now, it's like night and day, where now I eat incredibly healthy. All my fruits and vegetables and, all of this, drinking, my water every day, meditating, going to yoga, exercising, all of these other really, really healthy things that I personally think that everybody should do. And it really took getting that fibromyalgia diagnosis to finally kind of scare me into saying, you need to be healthier and you need to make these changes now.
Because the question is, imagine no symptoms came back when you were in that job in 2018.
Yeah.
Why are you in there?
Why did I still have the job?
Yeah. We have to ask ourselves sometimes, don't we? I mean, why does it take something like that to make us quit?
Yep.
I mean, and even with money, let's say you didn't have any money.
Yep.
Why would that stop you quitting? If it's a toxic job, we can always make a shift, can't we? Because we can get another job,
Yes.
And I think and I think sometimes the reason why I bring this up is I think it's an important thing to think about. Why are we in those situations? And you talked about this intrinsic quality that fibromyalgia will always come out. There's a lot of people who'd be in that job who wouldn't stick around for a day.
Yep.
So is it a genetic quality or is it a choice? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And I think something that I will always probably struggle with. And I'm, honestly, probably therapy is the best way to work on it. But having that thought of, not wanting to be a quitter or not wanting to fail. So, that was definitely a big part of it, of quitting my job felt like failing. And the other part of that was also, sometimes it's very hard to really trust in yourself that you are good enough. Something that I said to a lot of my friends who said, Rachel, why haven't you quit this? Why are you still on this job? Why are you still working here? And I said, because I don't think I can find another one. I don't think if I quit my job, I don't think anyone else will hire me. And more importantly, the salary at my job in my mind was so high that I thought no one else would ever pay me that. And, and I wasn't too far off. It took me 18 months to find my current job. So it definitely wasn't, it wasn't an overnight thing, when a lot of those fears were somewhat founded. And that, again, like I mentioned, it's hard to find a job sometimes. And that fear, I think, holds a lot of people back and holds a lot of people in these sort of toxic environments, because they're not ready, or they don't want to spend, like I did, 18 months to find the next thing.
Oh, for sure. It's a scary thing. But I just wonder, there's this divide in our society. There's the people who've never been ill.
Yeah.
And then there are people who's experienced chronic illness. You might say there's another divide, which is the people who've lived this fairyland life, and the people who've faced real adversity, whether that be violence, crime, whatever, financial hardship.
Yep.
And there's always this before and after. And it's interesting how our values change, don't you think?
Yeah.
When we go through that. And so it's important to learn these lessons from life and consider what's important, because we often are under delusion. Like if you actually look at that, like, because I hear this story all the time, Rachel, you see.
Yeah.
And I want to take a moment for us to explore it a little bit, because you're talking about this job and this salary and all this. How long do you reckon, let's say you didn't have fibromyalgia and you were immune, you had a genetic defect, right? Which meant you couldn't get fibromyalgia, unlike all the other people in the world, right?
Yeah.
How long do you reckon you would have been able to stick out that job?
That's a great question. I probably would have lasted another year, if not more.
Then what?
Yeah. I could see myself having a mental breakdown, and that being sort of the end.
Yeah. And if we then look at that salary that was higher than any salary you could get anywhere, and we average that over 5 years or 2 years or 10 years or 20 years, it's insignificant. And see, this is the changing rules that we all sort of go through. And I think we all sort of go through that as we get older and we have more and more experiences. It's a shifting goalpost for me every year. You know what I mean? That's life.
Yep.
These are important things. And we're talking about this performance and achieving in life. And it's like, it's about getting the balance right between, sometimes we have to stick it out. We don't want to be a quitter. We all know we don't want to be quitters, right? But where's quitting a good idea? And that's a tough judgment call. So you've had this experience, right? I mean, do you think it's changed how you look at things? Do you think post 18, where you had that 1 month long, or however long that was, month long mini relapse, because obviously you didn't have full blown fibro, but you had enough to say hello.
Yep.
So you had that little month. I mean, do you think that's changed things, or just I wonder what your thoughts are?
I would say I don't think the relapse really changed things. I think getting my current job is what made me realize, and made me look at careers a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So, it did take me 18 months, and it was incredibly hard. But again, no one's coming to save you. Mm. And I thought, okay, what skills can I learn to make me more employable? And so that's why I ended up going into web design and, trying to figure out what is it that I love doing, and let me focus on that, and let me build skills that make me employable. And, now I have this job, and it's amazing, and my team is amazing. And I'm actually making more money now than I was at that toxic job. Yeah. And seeing that really sort of solidified kind of the idea of hope, and that, things don't happen overnight. It took me 18 months, but it finally happened. And when it happened, it was better than anything I could have expected. And I think if for any reason at all, I cannot be in this job, whether there's a management change or who knows, maybe, I get laid off because of another recession. You never know what could happen with jobs. But knowing that it's happened before and that will happen again, and knowing that if anything should happen where I have to step away from this, there's going to be another opportunity down the line if I just kind of have faith that it's coming.
Faith is a powerful thing, huh?
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, like doing a recovery. Were there times where you just thought you were doomed?
Yes. And I don't know if it's better or worse that I didn't have anybody to talk to when I was going through my recovery. So all of the things I was doing, I was just kind of making it up as I went along. And I heard, I'd hear a thing, and I'd just have to believe that the choices that I was making they were going to help. I just had to believe that exercise would eventually help. Because there were no stories online. There were no Instagram accounts of other people who, found remission. There's nobody that I could say, well, it happened to her, so maybe it'll happen to me. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because on one hand, I just had to have faith in myself. But on the other hand, I never had to compare my journey to somebody else's. And I know that can be frustrating for some people who, might be exercising, might be doing a particular diet, might be doing all of the things that are supposed to be right, and it's not working, or it's taking too long. And they come across my YouTube channel, or they come across my Instagram account and say, it's not fair. Why is she in remission and I'm not in remission? It's not fair. And I never had to deal with those feelings. And so when people come to me and say that, I always say, don't follow me. Don't look at my Instagram. Don't look at my YouTube. Don't send me, you can send me messages and we can talk. But if knowing about me, or seeing my progress, or seeing that I can do all of the things that you wish you can do, if that's affecting your mental health and your own journey, cut that out until you're ready. Because one day when you are in remission, then you'll come back to me and say, oh my God, Rachel, it worked.
Because when we talk about it, what is it, right? Because we have a look. You didn't stop your diet when you had that little mini relapse.
Yep.
You didn't stop your exercise. So if you're talking about, other stressors, that's different for everyone, isn't it?
Yes.
Somebody else can't go to your psychotherapist and say, hey, can you help me with general anxiety disorder so I can get rid of fibromyalgia? Because the doctor will go, but you don't have general anxiety disorder.
Yeah.
Can you help me with the body dysmorphia? But you don't have body dysmorphia issues or food issues. So they can't help them with that, right? And so I think this is a key thing for when those people get discouraged. Why not me? Why you? Is to remember, like you say, there is no magic cure for this illness.
Yeah.
But understanding what's going on here and hearing your story, there's so much wisdom in there, right? And there's so many clues of how it happens. And it's about finding your version of that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think people should really
exactly
hear that, is that it's about finding their version. Let me just digress for a moment. As we nearing the conclusion, recovered. What does it mean? You became pain-free. You became symptom-free. Your doctor could no longer diagnose you. By the way, did you ever go back to that fibromyalgia specialist?
No, I never went.
Okay, all right, because it would be interesting to see what he would say. But you can live your life normal, right? You can do what you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
some people might call that cured. I hate the word cured personally, but whatever. Call it remission. Yep. I don't like the word remission either.
Okay.
Because I think remission is almost worse than cured. Cured suggests that you can never get it. Remission suggests it's like it's still there and could come back any moment. So I don't really like it. I use the word recovery, but there's no great word. No perfect word yet. But the point is like, what happens like? If you don't go and eat a cheesecake, have you eaten cheesecake since you recovered in 2013?
So that's a funny story. Yes, I have. And that was something that hasn't happened until recently. So at the very beginning, I really had to be very strict and say, no dairy, no gluten, nothing. And I had been pain-free for years. Years. And this was probably 2018 again, like 2019, very, very recently. And I said, I'm going to try a yogurt and let me just see what happens. And I had one yogurt and nothing happened. And I was still pain-free. And I thought, oh, okay, that's weird. And then the next day I was like, well, I'm going out to dinner, so I'm going to try to eat some bread, like the free bread that they always give. Let me just try it. And nothing happened. And I thought, wait, am I cured? Like, can I do this now? And by the third day of, I think I can't remember, I think it was pizza.
Now you're going the whole hog now.
Yep, immediately.
All right.
And I thought, okay, this is interesting, where I've noticed that as long as everything else is perfect, as long as I'm following everything else fine, if I have a slice of cheesecake or have a bite of something, I will be okay. And my body will process it and I'm fine. But it's a buildup. So it's like I irritate my gut just a little bit. And then the next day I irritate it a little bit more. And then my body says, no, what are you doing? You need to stop this.
So do you think you still have symptoms of IBS? Like, would you say you still have IBS? Because people often see those as a different condition to fibromyalgia.
Yeah, I think I still have IBS, and I'm constantly working on that. Unfortunately, IBS is one of those where it's like what are you going to do? You drink your water and you avoid the foods that irritate it. And, you take over-the-counter medication like fiber supplements or whatever it is that you need to do. But that's something, that I still struggle with. And I think that it happens to normally coincide with having fibromyalgia.
Yeah. So the main symptoms, if you go straight for your diet, are IBS symptoms. You don't get like pain flare-ups or something.
Yeah, no. So with things like if I went whole hog, so I pizza, pasta, anything just a lot for my system. Yeah. The IBS symptoms flare up, right? And the pain will come with it. But something that I feel weird saying, because I'm like, well, is it fibromyalgia? I don't know. The minute the IBS symptoms go away, or the minute that I start moving, the pain goes away immediately. So for me, if I did have a moment where I had pasta or pizza and immediately regretted it and thought, what did you do? I can't believe you just did that. I go to the gym and start exercising. And it's not because I ate unhealthy and then I'm trying to like out exercise any of the things I just ate. It's just to get my body moving, and it helps with the digestion of everything and kind of helps get the blood circulating. And typically by the time I leave the gym, the symptoms have disappeared.
Interesting. Well, look, thank you for sharing your story. I guess 7 years now that you've recovered with that little mini blip in 18. Do you, when you think about fibromyalgia, does it feel different there? Does it feel like a distant memory, or is it still close and raw?
Yeah, I sometimes feel guilty for saying that I have fibromyalgia. So if, I never tell anyone anymore. It's not something I talk about. It's not something I bring up, because I am symptom free, and I'm normal, quote unquote. And so I almost feel like it's not fair for me to say that I have it, or that I could even, my life experience could even be compared to someone who's still kind of going through it. And it's something that I struggle with, because on my social media I do try to talk about it and say, I have this and this is what I'm doing. But I've noticed that I talk about it sort of less and less because it is sort of becoming a distant memory.
So it's interesting, you still say the words, I have fibromyalgia, even though the doctor couldn't diagnose you with this condition any longer, right?
Yes.
What do you think is behind that?
I think that's tied to knowing that it's not cured.
Right. It's not like it can't come back.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And it's something that is a part of me. I think it'll always be a part of me. And I kind of, even when I was feeling like symptoms, I think it's very easy to let fibromyalgia kind of define who you are, or I see a lot of people like hold on to it as an identity because it is all consuming. But at least for me, it's something that I have and will always have, but it doesn't necessarily always define me. There are many other things about me and what make me, and that's just a tiny part of it.
Well, it's because you got a life. And when we're really experiencing fibromyalgia, there is nothing except fibromyalgia for most of us.
Yeah.
Some people I think manage to have, a low, like are able to manage their fibromyalgia and still engage in life, somewhat reasonably. But many of us sort of, it just becomes a complete shambles. And certainly when you're in remission, as you put it, and you've got your life back, it's easier to put it into a different perspective, isn't it? What would you say to people who are still ill with fibromyalgia? What's your message to them?
I think my message is, this is your life. And it's up to you to find the answer. And it's going to take a while. Nothing is going to magically appear. The answer is not going to magically appear. And finding what works for you might take years. But eventually, you're going to find it. And if you just kind of hold on to that hope, even if it takes years, knowing that one day you'll be able to look back on the time now and think, thank God I didn't give up. Like, thank God I just kept trying.
You thrown me back there myself. And that's fantastic advice, Rachel. Coming from somebody who had given up. Right, it's fantastic advice, and I thank you for sharing your story. Every story has the power to help us make a little bit of a shift, and certainly what you speak about here is about the hope, the faith. I think these are really the first step, because without that, no action will come. And clearly your story was all about taking that action. What would you, as a last question, what would you say to those people who, because let's face it, people who have fibromyalgia, it's not a lack of trying, I know before I gave up, I had tried, well, I hate the word everything, because obviously nobody tries everything, but we all think we try everything, but we don't. But it was an exhaustive list of things. And as you say, you people see you talking about the diet and talking about the sleep and talking about all these wonderful strategies you're saying, and then not getting those results. What is there anything you think you would say to them?
I think the thing that kind of pushed me forward was all of the changes that I made in my life, all of the choices that I made me a healthier person, whether or not they affected my fibromyalgia. So if, let's say, you're exercising and you are eating a certain diet and you're sleeping well and you're doing yoga and you're meditating and you're doing all of these things and they're not affecting your fibromyalgia, don't stop, because they're making you a healthier person anyway.
And they're making your life better.
Yes.
Regardless of whether the fibromyalgia symptoms are changing or not, your life is better for these things. And isn't that the ultimate goal? Exactly.
And, just holding on to that, because I've had a couple people reach out to me and say, they had been exercising for 2 years and was just convinced it would never work. They would never get better. But they were exercising because they knew it was healthy for them. And so they just kept going. And then after 2 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, all of a sudden, their fibro pain got better. And they were just like, I'm so glad I didn't stop. I'm so glad I kept going. That I didn't say, well, this isn't working, so forget it. And I think that I don't know, I think that can really help.
Absolutely, that's fantastic advice again, Rachel. Because isn't it a thing? It's just adding another building block, another part of the puzzle. And if you take it away again, then you're missing that piece. So how can you make a gain? But I love this whole notion that we take away this fear of failure, this fear of will it work or not. Forget all of that. If you're doing something that makes you feel better mentally, or that is good for you and your lifestyle and your health, then whether it affects the fibromyalgia or not, it's a win.
Yeah,
and I think to take that pressure off of I'm doing this and this is going to work, that pressure is just, it's not enjoyable, and it certainly isn't helpful. So I think that's awesome advice. Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it, and I know that people listening will be very inspired. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate getting a chance to share my story.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the podcast. We hope you felt supported by it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via cfsunravel.com, and make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to it. And you can leave a comment and a 4 or 5-star review if you feel so inclined. If you want to make sure you get your free copy of Discover Hope and get notified about all new recovery resources and interviews, including recovery interviews, subscribe to us via the website. Check out some of our other podcasts. I hope you'll join us again soon.